Well, good evening and welcome to the Philosophy of Information, where we will try to see events of our time with a more philosophical perspective. My name is Andrew Malosh, and I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. E. Michael Jones. Good evening, Dr. Jones. How are you tonight?
Good evening, Andre. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure you're back. I'm a little bit less nervous now than last time. You were my first guest as a blogger. I'm not used to this. I have a little bit more experience now.
Good,
So
good. So do I.
Oh, I think I was watching one of your podcasts. I think it was with Kevin. What's his
Barrett,
name?
Kevin Barrett.
Kevin Barrett, and you were mentioning that a woman she wrote to you and said you're national treasury of the United States.
Yeah,
So
life is full of surprises, and that was one of them. A lady, she's an Israeli. She met some guy I know in Chicago, and total strangers during COVID. I guess that joined them together. But anyway, it turns out that she knew who I was. This Israeli lady calls me a national treasure. And so I got to know her, got to meet her in person. Just a totally unique type of individual, like something it's just an incredible experience just knowing this lady. And last 2 weeks ago, after I gave a speech, maybe a little longer than that, I gave a speech in St. Louis. I stopped by, and here she was baptized in a little church in Indiana. So life is full of surprises. Life is full of surprises, and you never know when you say something where it's going to end up now. I mean, I told before we went on the air, I told you that this lady from Iran just contacted me. I kind of vaguely remember her. It turns out she's the great-granddaughter of the Ayatollah Khomeini. So I wrote back to her, and I said, where'd your great-grandfather get the idea that America was the great Satan? I said, that's the thesis of my new book. And on American identity, and I sent her a copy of the introduction. So anyway, I'm just feeling kind of amazed at the complexity of God's plan here.
well, like you always say, God has a plan for you. He has a
That's
plan
right.
for me. I think it's very important. There's one thing that maybe you can talk a little bit about. It is your new book, and I was watching it, and it was quite interesting to see it. Walking with the Bible and a gun. I watched one of your podcasts. I think you were talking about Clint Eastwood, and so is it related to the Logos, what you're referring to all the time?
Yes, absolutely. So the idea, every book I write is based on the last book I wrote. And so the idea that I got from my book, The Dangers of Beauty, which is a book on aesthetics, is that the new transformation that took place in Europe when Thomas Aquinas finally understood the implications of creation, that God created the universe, and talked about the change that it made. So before this, you had everybody was a Platonist, and Platonists believed that you took forms from this abstract realm and imposed them on inert matter like stone. You triangle, rectangle, and circles. You put them together, you got a temple, Greek temple, and you worship the forms there. This all changed when Aquinas started talking about the implications of creation, that God left traces of his being in creation. Logoi spermatikoi, the Greeks would say. And he said that now existence calls forth essence into being. Instead of
going back to the unity.
Right. Existence is the primary thing now, not essence. That was what it was for Plato. There was the realm of forms. That's what reality was. The world we live in was time and flux, and nobody could make any sense out of it. This is exactly the paradigm for American identity. Exactly that paradigm. So what we're talking about here is let's just concentrate on Massachusetts right now, because that's the most important colony. The Puritans come over with their essences. What do I mean by essences? They have the Calvinist understanding of the Bible. These are the categories they brought with them from England. They land here, and now these essences come in contact with existence, which is the frontier, which is the wilderness, the woods. And existence modifies essence. Yeah, they could not carry those Calvinist categories west of Massachusetts. By the time of Solomon Stoddard, Calvinism had broken down. He had to create a halfway covenant. His grandson, Jonathan Edwards, tried to revive Calvinism. It would not work in America because existence had modified those categories and made them realize they won't work. They don't work. It's like like they come over here and they said, well, now that we're in charge, we're going to make the year equal to 360 days because it's simpler than 365 and 1/4 day. Well, it's close.
It doesn't work.
It's close, but it doesn't work. And
it doesn't work.
Sooner or later, you end up with snow in July, and you're wondering, well, how did that happen? That's exactly what happened. This is the incubator for American identity. This is where it came. This movement from east to west, the movement which allowed existence to modify essence. And so the man who's on the cover of that book, right in the center, is Daniel Boone, who was probably the first American. The right guy in the middle there, it's Daniel Boone. And the guy next to him is carrying a gun. And so Daniel Boone started off as a Quaker in New Jersey. Well, Quakers are pacifists. Well, you want to take people through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky, you have to pick up a gun. As soon as he picked up a gun, he was no longer a Quaker. So this is the how American identity got generated over the, what should I say, the last 200 years.
200 years. Do you think that, because you referred to the gun, you think the gun is part of Logos?
No.
No.
Well, no. But what is the gun? The gun is the extension of the will. The gun is the technological extension of the will. And so what we're saying here is you can go to nature. When Calvinism finally blew up and disappeared, you had the opposite reaction. Now you had somebody like Thoreau. Emerson wrote an essay called Nature. Thoreau goes off to Walden Pond and he says, what can I learn from nature? Well, you can learn stuff from nature. Okay. And so he does learn stuff, but then he takes it too far. And so he says a morning in spring is like the forgiveness of sins. No, it's not. There's only one way you heard about the forgiveness of sins, and that was because you read the Bible when you were at college. So they took it too far. And so the problem here is it comes up in Emerson immediately. So you have to be docile to learn from nature.
Yes.
You have to be docile to nature, to the truth. And Thoreau, I have a PhD in American literature. Nobody ever talks about the fact that Thoreau said you have to be chaste. You have to have chastity in order to learn from nature. What's the opposite of chastity? Which is lust. What is lust? It's a desire. It's your will being imposed on human sexuality rather than your will conforming to the logos of human sexuality. And that's the problem. That's exactly the problem that they were confronted with. And the problem was exacerbated by the gun, because the gun allows you to impose your will on nature or on other men. And that's the opposite of what Aquinas is talking about.
I think you make a good point, and you in the Libido Dominandi, the book is based on that. We are dominated by our passion and our desire, and if we cannot control them, somebody else will control them for us. So
that's right.
It's interesting.
A man has as many masters as he has vices. That's what St. Augustine said.
Exactly. And I'm finishing The Danger of Beauty, and it's astonishing because I was having those intuitions since maybe 30, 40 years. And now you put words on them. That's very, and for me, it is something interesting because I go through all the characters that you describe, like Foucault, like Derrida, because I studied French philosophy and I studied French literature. So my perception of reality was tinted by those structuralists. And right. I could not get out of it. I could not get out of it because they are, it's like Schoenberg. You refer to Schoenberg. And I practically all have the work of Schoenberg. And of course, after a certain time, I could not get out of it. It's depressing.
Yeah, someone who was it said the prison house of language. These guys create prisons for you, and it's very difficult to get out. I was when I did that biographical sketch for that French magazine, I said that I was a 17-year-old existentialist. I read Camus and Sartre when I was 17 years old.
Yes, of course.
And of course, I think it's the right age to read that, or the wrong age to read that, but it appeals to a 17-year-old.
Yes.
But so I got over that, okay. But then when I got to graduate school, the French took over again with Foucault and Derrida.
And Derrida.
You couldn't write a dissertation in the 1970s in America without mentioning Jacques Derrida, one way or the other. You just had to do it. It was obligatory.
And they invaded literature. They invaded philosophy, and I don't know if it is still like this today. I think it's even worse. You mentioned something about Logos and the Bible. Sean Furch, he's an American Christian singer, and he was here touring in Canada. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I think he's still in Canada, and he was canceled in many cities. And the church that hosts one of his concerts in Montreal was fined $2,500. And someone threw a smoke grenade at Sean Furch during his concert. The police did not even intervene, and they're not even trying to find the perpetrator. Did you know about this scandal? What happened? Because he came here.
Never heard of it. No.
And Sean Furch, I suppose what I saw and what I read, he's a MAGA supporter, and he worships God in churches, and he went everywhere, and he was canceled in Montreal, in Toronto, in Nova Scotia. He was canceled in Alberta, and at the same time, there was an imam who was promoting Islamization of Canada, which is quite fascinating. Antifa or everywhere in Montreal, they do manifestation. The police is there always protecting them. And the funny part, yesterday there was a gay pride parade in Montreal. As a matter of fact, there were 3 gay parades. There was one for they called it Rad Pride, Radical Pride. And there was the Jewish parade that was excluded last week from the LGBT parade. So it was like a madness. My question would be toward worshiping God in Canada. What's your perception of what is happening here? I have the feeling that we live in an asylum.
Canada's always been a mystery to me. I thought it was like one big university campus. But because they were politically correct way ahead of the time here, where you would see it only on university campuses. I think that there's an identity crisis. Canada never developed an identity, a coherent identity, largely because of the split between the French Catholics and the English Protestants. They're 2 completely different operating systems, and they don't work. They don't work together. And so when you came to America, if you were a Catholic, you had to pretend you were a Protestant in public, because that was the dominant culture. And now we're seeing
white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, yes.
Right, that's what it was. When Samuel Huntington wrote a book about American identity, he said an American is an Anglo-Protestant. Well, that's good in a sense, because at least you've created a paradigm of American identity. It doesn't work anymore, but at least you had some type of ideal. And there was a sense in which, like people of my generation, you'd want to dress like those Protestant boys because they had, teach you how to dress. You didn't want to wear those pointy, shiny shoes because you look like an Italian from South Philly when you did that. You wanted to look like you went to the Ivy League, okay? It's good because at least you had a paradigm, and if you have a paradigm, you can reject it. But there's a fort, right? The Straits of Mackinac. It's called Fort Michilimackinac, And you and I both live in New France. Okay. And this was in many ways the center of New France. So the state of Michigan, after creating the park, they create a video about the history of Fort Michilimackinac. And it starts off, first picture is the voyageur marrying the Indian maiden.
The Indian, yes.
And there's the Catholic priest blessing the wedding. Okay. That's the beginning. That's French Canadian culture. That's Catholicism, where you intermarry. Same thing happened in Mexico, another Catholic colony. So they intermarry. Okay. Then the English take over. The English this is what says, the state of Michigan says, they bring a Jew in to run the trading post. The Jew then cheats all the Indians. The Indians are mad. They kick, they're playing high lie or something like that. They throw the ball over the stockade. They knock, please let us in. As soon as they get in, they slaughter everyone, probably including the Jew. And at this point, the Indians say, we are no longer loyal to the King of England. We want to be loyal to the King of France.
To the King of France.
They understood intuitively, these are two fundamentally different and incompatible operating systems. And you can't integrate them. It's either one or the other. So when the English took over Nova Scotia, they showed up and they announced they're Presbyterians. And they're bringing Jesus Christ to the people of Nova Scotia. And the people say, well, wait a minute, we've been Christian for 200 years now, and we're going to stay that way. The French had intermarried with the Micmac. There was no distinction whatsoever. The English then say, no, you have to speak English and you have to become a Presbyterian. When they say, no, we're not going to do it, then they say, we'll go to plan B, which is we're going to scalp anybody who doesn't agree with us. And when that didn't work, they shipped them all off to Louisiana, where they became Cajuns. So you've got this, in this Protestant system, you have the state church is baked into it. The church is only for a certain group of people. It turns out that they all look kind of the same in England. You can call it white when they come over here because they're confronted with African slaves. And conflict is built into this system. Conflict is not built into the Catholic system. But you couldn't, there were too many Quebecois to exterminate. You couldn't overcome them. You couldn't convert them. And so you have this impasse where the impasse is known as Canada. So to go back to Sun Tzu, if you don't know who you are and you can't identify the enemy, you will lose every battle. So Canadians never knew who they were. What are we? There is no we here. And the result is they end up a conquered people.
Yes.
And betrayed by people like Pierre Trudeau.
Trudeau is one example, but what you're mentioning, Quebecers, or what I call French Canadian, they don't like it when we call them Quebecers today because of the sovereignist movement of the 1960s that was fought from by Pierre Trudeau. But I'm having a lot of contact now with English Canadian. And I have a friend, he lives in Ontario. And it's funny because now he moved to Michigan. And I told him, I said, if I'm a political dissident, will you give me asylum in Michigan? He said yes. But the man I like him very much, but he's a Protestant. And a couple of weeks ago, he told me, he said, I hate Catholicism. And I was so shocked. Says, what do you hate about Catholicism? And that's my question. You say two operating system. Canada is like it was never a country for me. It is a colony, and Quebec is dominated. We thought we were dominated by the English Canadian. We're not. We're dominated by the British Crown. So how do we solve this problem between French Canadian and English Canadian? I'm not even talking about immigration, because immigration is exploding in Canada now. And Sean Furch, he was here to worship God. He was in a church. They we don't have freedom of cult here, freedom of expression in Canada, if we ever had it. So
No,
I don't know.
actually, the reaction to the trucker convoy was shocking. The fact that they could freeze their bank accounts, the fact that that lady Yara Sachs, who
Yeah.
could come on,
Well,
honk equals Heil Hitler.
I Hitler.
This is it was hard to believe that people could be that what should I say, out of contact with reality. But
Oh,
that's
you're too kind. I would have said something else.
but I mean, how did this happen? I think that it's this lack of identity. You don't know where to stand. It's happening here. Like with the identity theft is a serious problem here, and the main vehicle of identity theft is race, specifically white, the category of white, which is a Protestant English category. It's not a Catholic category. Okay, so when there was the statue of St. Louis, we're talking about New France again. With
Yes.
St. Louis, the wave of iconoclasm that swept through the country after Black Lives Matter got these people together, and they were going to tear down the statue of St. Louis. And there was a guy named Umar Lee who called himself a Muslim, but that was a later incarnation of changing identity. He said that the people who are supporting the statue are all white supremacists. Well, the white supremacists were praying the rosary. That's not something white supremacists do. It was identity theft. And that has been consistent throughout American history. One form of identity theft or another. And race is one of the main forms of identity theft going on right now. If you convince someone that they are white, you've convinced them to give up all identity and all political power. And that's what happened to that demonstration in Charlottesville when they tried to defend the statue of Robert E. Lee. They found they had no rights because they had accepted an identity that was basically a false identity.
But it's interesting, in Quebec, Montreal, or I would compare this with Toronto and Ottawa. I don't see how we can reconcile Protestant and Catholic. It seems I have a lot of conversation with people, English Canadian now, because I speak well English and I have podcasts with two colleagues who are in BC. And it's fascinating because, first of all, they don't know Quebec at all. They don't know the French culture at all. Like French Canadian or Quebecers don't know the English culture at all. It's like two ghettos, and they accuse each other of, dominating each other. So I don't see how we can get out of it. And the government, any government in Canada, provincial or federal government, they're playing the same game, trying to separate us so they can control us. So right. I don't know if we have a future. But you're an American. You have the feeling of your country, of citizens. Do they know anything about Canada? Canada, it is what the attic of United States. We have trade deal, and we trade 75% of our GDP is with the US.
Right.
So you're our greatest neighbor. If I cannot get along with my neighbor, what will happen? I see Trump and Carney now. It's like it's a theater. It's a comedy. Yeah. Do you think Americans know what is happening, or do you think they care about Canada at all?
No, they don't. At least they know where it is. Yeah, which is more than they can say about Iran. They don't know where Iran is, but they know where Canada is. But I mean, let's think. What about Neil Young, a Canadian boy? I think he's from Calgary or one of those places out there.
Something like that.
He's in America now. He adopted. There was American music was at this time. Talking about my generation, he's in his 70s, was so powerful. It had this force field that just absorbed people. I saw the same thing in Germany. When I went over there, it was American music that really got me into what the people were doing. I joined a band. I was in a rock band in Germany. That was such a powerful, what should I say, identity. That had a powerful identity giving effect for my generation, for the people who were the baby boomers. it gave them a kind of identity that was bound up with the music, and it was so powerful that it just sucked Neil Young out of Canada, and now he's an American. So this is the situation here is different because here Protestantism is evaporating. So I don't think it's ever going. It will never be compatible. It just is not going to exist anymore. That's the fundamental, I think, fact of this movement now. I'm saying that there were 3 republics in America.
Yes, I heard that.
Okay, and we're coming to the end of the Third Republic, 1945 to 2025. That 80-year period is now coming to an end, and that means a lot of the categories that we took as natural, like coming with nature,
for granted,
we took for granted, they're going to disappear. Like whoever thought that there would be no more Sears and Roebuck? Whoever thought that the shopping mall would be empty?
The Hudson Bay Company filed for bankruptcy 6 months, and now they are liquidated. They're liquidating the assets, and it is a Chinese company who bought all the store. The Hudson Bay Company is part of the structure of Canada. The counter.
Right.
We're losing all this.
Right.
All those categories that we had.
Right. Right. And I think Israel is another category. I think that's going to go. I think they got 3 more years. That'll be 80 years, 2028. I think conservatism is going to go. I think that the military technology that the United States relies on was obsolete. They're trying to catch up to drones and missiles.
Yes. I'm not sure they will catch up. I'm not sure.
No, I'm not. I don't think so either, because they came too late to the game. I'm saying all these things. So in a sense, we don't have to deal with the Protestant issue here anymore, because there won't be a Protestant issue. I don't know whether you saw this interview between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz.
Yes, I saw it. Yes.
I mean,
I still have headache with.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But I mean, Tucker Carlson ruthlessly exposed the intellectual bankruptcy of Christian Zionism, which is Ted Cruz's religion. But the other thing is, these are the only 2 options left for Protestants. You could have the kind of homosexual Episcopalian church, which is the mainstream church, like the Methodists, like the Presbyterians here in South Bend. They all fly the rainbow flag. On the other hand, you could become a Christian Zionist if you're a Baptist in that direction, and that's worse than homosexuality. So what exactly? I remember, people of older than me, when there were televangelists like Jerry Falwell.
I do remember that. I was watching a lot of American TV when I was young. So
right. So powerful Protestant figures, they're all gone. They don't exist anymore. And then other, just more on a more personal level, I remember Harold O.J. Brown, who was not as well known. He was a serious thinker. He was a Congregationalist who went to Harvard and rode at Harvard. My son rode at Harvard. So this is and not just something on television. This is an actual lived Protestant culture, high culture. Harvard is as high as you get. He then became disillusioned with what was going on in academia. He went to this, created a new seminary called the Deerfield Seminary in Chicago, outside Chicago, tried to maintain these American values, the sanctity of the family, the sanctity of human life, all of these things. And then he died. And that world died with him. The idea of a Congregationalist is obsolete. I mean, that was really obsolete. It's obsolete. The idea of a Congregationalist minister at home at Harvard is obsolete. The last Christian minister they had was an atheist, I think, or something like that. All of these, the concrete manifestation of Protestantism, the concrete enculturation of Protestantism that he symbolized has disappeared. That seminary doesn't exist anymore. The Lutheran school here in Valparaiso went out of business. All of these things are passing away, and we're waiting to see what's going to emerge. So I'm saying there are three ethnic groups in America: Protestant, Catholic, Jew. When the Protestants disappear, you're going to have Catholics versus Jews, and that's going to be a conflict. And I think that's the fundamental conflict we're facing right now, especially in light of the fact that the IDF just had a tank fire on the Holy Family Church in Gaza, which prompted the Pope to give Benjamin Netanyahu a call. And Netanyahu apologized. This is a sign of the emerging conflict that's going to happen once Protestantism evaporates.
You said Netanyahu apologized. I think it's the first time in his life that he ever apologized for something.
The first time in 2,000 years that a Jew ever apologized for anything. Didn't blame the Catholics for being anti-Semites, and so they deserve to have their church shelled.
I was always making jokes with some. I have some Jewish friends. I was always making jokes. Okay, I'm a misogynist. I'm a homophobe. I'm a transphobe. Oh, I forgot anti-Semite. And they're always laughing, saying that I see it is collapsing. You're mentioning it. I don't see it like this in the English part of Canada. I don't know. They say that they believe in God. They're Christian, Protestant, but they never talk about spirituality. They never talk about God. The only thing they talk about is economy. Now Alberta wants to separate, and Alberta is pushing the narrative to have a confrontation or a conflict with the federal government. And the only argument that they're pushing up front is economy, oil and gas. We want to be free and independent. And we will talk maybe later about the 51st state, which for me is a joke.
There is a strong connection between states like Montana.
Yes.
And it's just
it's a natural connection.
Right, it's absolutely natural. It's an imaginary line. I was just in a conference in northern Montana, right near the Canadian border. The police told me that the people from, is it Alberta? That's right north of Montana. Is it Alberta or is it Saskatchewan?
You have Alberta and Saskatchewan. I think it's a shared border.
Well, anyway, what it is, they would come and the farmer, the rancher his ranch was on the border, would leave the gate open so that the guys could come into Montana, because you could drink later in Montana than you could in Canada. So it's just that natural cowboy culture. It's like cowboy culture up there.
They are neighbors. They're neighbors.
Right. It's natural that they would share the same type of cowboy values and not have the state mean anything, especially if you're thinking about what it's like in the East, And so if you don't have this dramatic, strong identity, naturally it's going to fragment, and they'll be like Neil Young. They'll feel more attracted to what's the culture that's south of them.
There's a lot of Canadians that are going to the United States, like I told you, one of my friends. And what I was thinking last year, I was thinking about the United States, and I was, the confrontation between the federal government and the state of Texas over immigration and the wall of Trump. And I was telling myself, okay, the United States will be Balkanized. And then I was wrong, because I saw that the Balkanization will touch the weakest country, which is Canada, because we, like you said, we don't have any identity. We're under the spell of the British Crown. Mark Carney was not elected; he was nominated. There was a leadership race for the Liberal Party, and he kicked out all the other opponents. He was practically crowned, and after that, he became prime minister with a minority government. But and since April 28th, since the election, he's multiplying all those declarations about Islam is a Canadian value. And it is, and now with what is happening now in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, there's a lot of wildfire, and they're banning people to go walk in the hood, hiking, $150,000 fine, 1 year in jail. And we have this feeling here that it's COVID 2.0. Well, how do you feel as an American?
I'm tired of smoke coming down from Canada. If you want my honest opinion, my oldest son lives in Detroit. The sky was covered; it was nothing but haze. Now
Yes.
we in culture wars. My colleague Elisa Rangel is writing about these fires and floods. There are all these fires and floods that are happening now, and she thinks it's man-made. I think that
Well,
the story of Maui is obviously man-made to drive the natives off the land, so that the rich people can buy up shore property.
well, you're right, and I was thinking about the wildfire. They're so incompetent that they do not fight them. And our CMP agent was even admitting that he started himself a wildfire and he could not control it. You're mentioning Maui, the destruction of Gaza. It's the same thing. They now Netanyahu said that he wants to take control of the Gaza Strip. After what? After slaughtering 150,000 people, the process is always the same. But you, as an American, if I would say, you can imagine we would have a country like Canada united with the European Union and with the Islamization of the society. How would how would they feel about this? How is this at your north border?
First of all, Islam is not an issue in the United States of America. My oldest son lives outside of Detroit in Dearborn, which is a very Islamic, probably the most Islamic city in America. They're such an insignificant part of the population that they don't really pose a threat. Nobody really thinks a lot about Islam, and compared to France and England, where it is a serious threat. So what I've been saying in England is, we need to work with the Muslims against the Jews. The Jews are the biggest threat, and we have succeeded. There's a lady, a doctor, Ali Rehiana, who was from Pakistan. She immigrated to England. She got a doctorate in medicine or a degree in medicine from Cambridge. Well, that makes you English, doesn't it? Well, yes. She then protests against the genocide in Gaza, and she's fired from her job at the National Health Service. Well, wait a minute, that's got nothing to do with your ability as a doctor. Why did you do that? And so we joined in the protest, joined with the Muslims, but Catholics that I know in London joined in with them, and she was reinstated. So I think this is what has to happen where there's a significant Muslim population, because you'll find that these people are more conservative when it comes to the family and stuff like that than the people who are at the top, namely the Jews, and they're constant pushing of abortion and pornography and things like that. So I think there's a natural alliance there. But as I said, in America, it's not significant. There are so few of them. It's just not a significant issue here.
Well, okay, that's interesting what you're saying, because in Canada it is. And when we see the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, saying that Islam is a Canadian value, I tell myself, sorry, Canada is supposed to be a Christian country, and divided because of the conquest in 1759 between Catholic and Protestant, like you. But I don't know. In big cities like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver is a little bit more Chinese. We have the feeling that we are invaded by lobbies, Pakistani, Khalistani, Indian. We see them everywhere. Even I live in a small village, 40 kilometers of Montreal. All the Amazon delivery board, they're Pakistani, they're Indian. They don't even speak French nor English. How can you communicate? They don't integrate at all.
You can't integrate well under those conditions. You have to learn the language. I learned this. when I lived in Germany, I went to Germany. I said, I have to learn the language.
Yes.
I have to be able to sit there with a group of Germans who are discussing their issues, and I have to be able to participate in their conversation. Not just, how are you, and blah blah blah.
No, not
It's
something, not a chit
you
chat.
have to be able to participate in their conversation on their level, accepting their culture. And it wasn't hard for me to do it all because I'm half German, and I felt more at home in Germany than I do in certain parts of America. So it was easy, and it was a Catholic area, and that's where I came back to the Catholic faith. So it was easy for me to do. I was totally accepted. They wanted me to become a German citizen, and so on and so forth. But that's what you have to do. You have to learn the language. You have to assimilate into their culture. You can't come in. And the problem is with Americans, they're the occupying force. And if you go to the American segments of army bases in southern Germany, they don't mix at all. They don't learn the language. They are an occupying power that will be going to be disliked and hated by the local people.
Well, integrating and assimilating since 1967 with the multiculturalism of Pierre Trudeau, forget it. It will never happen. Now it's ghettos everywhere. Brampton, Ontario. Now people are moving out of Brampton because it's the Indian community there that is taking all the public service jobs, police, public officer, and they are controlling. They're even promoting. There was a Tim Horton. Tim Horton. It is
the coffee, the donut guy.
Now we call this Jack Meat Sing Horton because it is a joke because he's from Kallifat. But they made a commercial only in Punjabi, and people were saying, "What? You go to Tim Horton to have a coffee, and they do a commercial and advertising only in Punjabi." Wait. It even breaks the rule, violates the rule of official language in Canada. But they don't care because the government does not punish them.
Right.
So we are stuck in this.
You had a strong identity in Quebec because the Indian and the French population were totally assimilated. They intermarried. That was a successful integration, a successful identity. The problem is it didn't fit in with the rest of Canada. That's the problem.
Yes, but what you're mentioning, they were assimilated, or they were mixed, or through Catholicism.
Right. Absolutely.
And since 1960, I was born in 1959. I saw the collapse of Catholicism in Quebec, and at the profit of, let's say, a sovereignist movement, and we are invaded by traitors, the elite that is, first of all, illiterate, ignorant, arrogant. I don't know how we can get out of this because I thought it was only in Quebec. Now I see that it's everywhere in Canada. So, except maybe Alberta, but even then, when Alberta will say, "Okay, we'll have a referendum and we will get out of the Confederation," I can guarantee you that the British Crown will never let them go. It's like I always say, you don't negotiate with the king.
Right.
You mentioned many times. You said we want our country back. We will take our country back, like you said, the end of the Third Republic. I don't know. I don't know how we can do this, and I don't know. I said, do you think that United States can help Canada? You think it is possible? Not forget natural resources. Now it will be the supposedly peace summit between Putin and Trump in Alaska, which is quite interesting because it is just north of Canada, and we're stuck between Russia and United States. Do you think that Trump has any intention of helping Canada at all?
Helping Canada? Help him to do what? Let me ask a thought experiment. Suppose America did take over Canada. What difference would it make?
Well, we would have your constitution. That would be positive. We have the constitution here. They violate the Constitution all the time. They don't care. And when we go to court against the government, it's always the British Crown. It's always, we don't have any representation. It does not exist here. It's the Privy Council. So there's a lot of people in Alberta now. They're balancing between having a referendum and being a sovereignist. But you sovereign, let's say they are independent, they're still surrounded by a powerful neighbor, which is the United States. So,
what did the truckers movement start in Alberta? Didn't it start out west?
Yes, it started in the west. It started in Alberta, and after that, the rest of the province joined. Even in Quebec, I started to feel what was Canadian, what was Canada in 2022 with the Freedom Convoy. Before that, I was completely
surprised.
lost.
I was really surprised because it didn't strike me as like classic Canadian identity or behavior to have this trucker thing. It struck me as more American. And so it would make sense that it would begin in the West, okay? And then when it comes east, it runs into Yarra Sax.
Well, and you know,
what was the Christia, what was the Ukrainian lady?
Which Ukrainian lady?
Christia, what was her name?
Okay, the Ministry of Finance, Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah.
Chrystia Freeland. Well, yeah. Chrystia Freeland, we know, her grandfather was a Nazi collaborator in a newspaper in Galicia in 1942. And when in the House of Commons, they asked her the question about it, she could have said, it's my grandfather, okay? No, she lied. They lie constantly. And I'm sorry, we had an election April 28. 9 million people voted for the Liberals. Can you imagine United States taking Canada? You will end up with 9 million more Democrats on your back.
Maybe. I gave a speech in Winnipeg once, and it was sponsored by Ukrainians. There was a strong Ukrainian presence in Winnipeg, so I'm not surprised that
the Ukrainian diaspora is 1.5 million in Canada, growing because of the conflict in Ukraine, and of course we're following United States. We're following the foreign policy of the United States. Not complicated. Slava Ukraine. We send and now Canadians are starting to be split between this because poverty is rising, criminality is rising, the debt is skyrocketing. And I tell myself, what if Albertan people decide to separate? Like you said, they will have natural links with Montana because they have the same identity. The cowboy.
I think that's true.
So, and
the man who sponsored that conference was a Canadian refugee who had moved down to Montana because of the tyrannical nature of the regime in Toronto.
So, if I go back to my question, how do you think Americans will perceive Canada if, for example, Canada becomes very aggressive under the government of Mark Carney, being part of European Union? You bring the conflict of Europe here on American soil.
It's not going to work in Alberta because Alberta, they're cowboys, and that's a strong identity. That's a very strong identity.
Yes,
that simply transcends national boundaries. Americans were cowboys. I mean, let's face it. That was a strong identity marker for all Americans throughout the 20th century. It's in my book. I have a whole thing about the development of the cowboy. As what happened to your religious identity as you went westward. It became the worship of nature. It was like Thoreau transposed to Montana.
Yes.
That's exactly what it was. The first cowboy novel was called The Virginian. It's in the book. It's in the Walking with the Bible and a Gun book. And it's all nature worship. And there's a conflict with a Calvinist minister. They're going to throw it off. This is, I think this is the identity of that whole Western part of the continent.
Yes, exactly.
Irrespective of the border. The border does not mean much here when it comes to this identity as a cowboy.
I would say except for British Columbia and the California of Gavin Newsom
That's
today.
different. That's different. That's the coast. That's the coast, and it's a different culture. But right up the center, I think we have that strong identity that
That strong bond, yes, I see it too. And here in Montreal, we're close to New York,
right.
so we have this connection. The maritime province, they're much more close to Louisiana, south the East Coast. And I don't know how Canadian can overcome their differences now. Actually, Canada is playing a very dirty game because Mark Carney, for example, met Donald Trump, and now Donald Trump imposed a 35% tariff on steel and on many products that are produced in Canada, and we're seeing inflation going up again. Honestly, the government here does not have any legitimacy. I think they are an agent of the city of London. They don't want us to unite
That's right.
in Canada. And so how can you
Well, be careful what you pray for. They don't want them to unite as Canadians. Then the country will split up. It will split up vertically. It will split up vertically. You know what I mean? Canada, Montana, Alberta is a classic
Alberta,
example.
yes.
California, British Columbia, New York, Montreal. I don't know. It seems to me that if you don't have that strong national identity, and the government is constantly trying to play, let's say, the French or against the English,
Against
and so on
the
and so
English.
forth, you'll be careful what you pray for. You may get more disunity than you really want. The whole thing may dissolve.
Well, maybe that's not a bad thing. In Baron Metal, you always refer to the British Crown, how they usury and how it started, and we are under the influence or the control of a big corporation in Canada. We cannot have any accountability. So yes, maybe it will be the end of the British Crown. After the Brexit in 2016, I don't know why they got out of the European Union in the first place, because it was not only the question of staying sovereign economically. I think they wanted to play a dirty game with the European Union, and now we see it in Ukraine. We see it in Azerbaijan. We see it in Armenia. All the what they call the rimland around Russia. They're playing a very dirty game, starting some conflict, regional conflict. Do you think that Canada and United States can have an alliance with the actual government? Because it seems that Carney and Trump are not on very good terms.
It's hard to talk about Trump because he's so erratic and doesn't really follow through on any of his principles, but and also doesn't really threaten the crucial issue, which began
Yes.
with the Reformation. Once you had the Reformation in England, you had an alien international kind of oligarchy taking over the country and viewing the natives as the enemy.
Yes.
And so the first thing that Queen Elizabeth had to do, she lost all legitimacy. And so the first thing he had to do was create a police state. And the police state would create plots like the gunpowder plot or the Hesketh plot, false flag operations, in order to keep the population, which is fundamentally Catholic, to keep them off balance and constantly terrorized, until finally Belloc says that by the time of the gunpowder plot, the Catholic mind had been lost in Canada. But in order to do that, they had to accept their subjugation to these oligarchic elites that were symbolized by the City of London. This is international finance that is running the
International
country,
banking.
running the country in their interest against the interest of the native people. William Cobbett talks about this with the Whig oligarchs and the founding of the Bank of England. He said, what you have now is a country of taxpayers and tax eaters. And the tax eaters run the country. The Whig oligarchs run the country, and everyone else is contributing to their wealth and their own loss of control. And what happened in effect was what you had with the Bank of England was the inexorable laws of economics, particularly compound interest. After 70 years, all floating loans become unrepayable. And so that went like that. Suddenly it goes up like that. At that point, Lord Townsend goes to Adam Smith and says, what do we do now? And Adam Smith says, make the colonies pay. And that led to the American Revolution. So that's what happened here. That was the thing that created this type of American unity early on. And it's continued with various modifications over this period of time until the point now where I think that the paradigm is going to be modified again. And I said that with talking about Clint Eastwood and
Yes.
Gran Torino. If there were ever a guy who used a gun, it was Clint Eastwood. He made it famous, that Dirty
Harry, exactly.
And he played cowboys as well. And then at the end, I can't exaggerate what a great movie Gran Torino is, because it addresses this question of identity associated with the gun, dealing with other races. You're going to deal with them with a gun? Is that the way you're going to deal with them? And it gets this transformation at the end where he turns the gun around into something completely different. I mean, I could go on. I could give a whole lecture on that. Read the book. That's all in the book. But I mean, I'm saying that we are undergoing a modification again of American identity. And I'm saying the only options now are you're either a Jew or you're a Catholic. And we're going to have to fight that battle right now because they are two completely incompatible ideas. And so the question is, do we have a moral law that applies to every human being on the face of the earth? Or do we have the exceptional group of people who have Jewish privilege that can break the moral law whenever they see fit? That's the fundamental world conflict right now. And it's going to be hammered out in America, as far as I can tell.
So you'll have to convince 20 million Protestants in Canada because they don't see they never talk about religion. This is fascinating because you talk about the moral code of man, but you have the moral code of God, the Bible, and there's a lot of people who say that they're Christian, but they never feel this this need to worship. And Sean Fitch, when he was here, and I don't know if it was because he's a supporter of MAGA, but it was censored everywhere, and people were applauding the censorship. It was like there's no free speech here. Like you said, people had their bank account frozen. They were put in jail without a trial for 3 years.
Right.
Some people.
Right. Totally tyrannical government. I had a lot of contact with Canada in the 1980s, and it was largely through the Right to Life movement. So Father Paul Marks used to have conferences in Toronto during this period of time. People from all over Canada and all over the United States would come together and unite on this issue. The problem is they could never articulate the enemy. They could never identify the enemy, who was at that time was Henry Morgenthaler.
Yes, with his abortion clinic.
Yeah, I mean, so every time he was doing something that was clearly illegal, every time the cops would show up, he'd roll up his sleeve and point to his Auschwitz tattoo.
And they will let him go.
And they let him go. And the fact that at that moment in time, the American Right to Life movement could not articulate it. They could not make that statement. They simply couldn't say it. They couldn't say it.
Now they can, because what we saw with the judgment of Roe versus Wade. But in Quebec, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. People are pro-abortion. They are under a spell because of the nature of the culture here. They're so afraid. 9 million people in Quebec. You have 8.5 million French Canadians who don't speak English. They are sure that they are victim of the English community, and they
Right.
want separation. Like they will achieve sovereignty and independence. They will not. First of all, we're bankrupt in the sense that we receive $14 billion of equalization from Alberta. This is incredible, and we don't get out of it. I don't see how we can.
This reminds me of Ireland. What you see,
Yes, exactly.
what you see in Ireland is an identity crisis, where a nationalism is now at odds with Catholicism, and there are people now, Irish, they're breaking away from their Catholic identity, and they are being sucked into another identity that's going to be self-defeating, as far as I can tell. It leads to violence. They are upset with the forced migration, the weaponized migration, and they have every right to be upset. They have a right to be upset about that because it's trying to destroy their culture. The question is, how do you respond to that? And I had these conversations with Gemma O'Doherty.
Yes,
I'm not talking to her anymore. I don't know what happened, but the line went dead with Gemma O'Doherty. She's so upset about. She kept sending me pictures of Ballahadreen, which is where my grandfather's people came from, in the 1970s. I said, Gemma, I'd love to go back to the 1970s, but you're going to have to give me a time machine because I can't do it.
You can't go back.
We have to deal with the world as it exists now. And the world as it exists now, I think if you're going to think about it, then think about all the Irish babies who were aborted.
Exactly.
And stop complaining as if you're somehow innocent victims. I mean, in a sense, you are. They're trying to do this, but you opened the door for this invasion by killing off the Irish. I said for every baby you aborted, God sent a Muslim and an African to take their place as punishment. Think about those lines and stop talking to me as if it's the IRA all over again and you're going to firebomb a bus or something like that and solve your problem.
Well, that is related to, for example, to your book, The Bible and the Gun. Instead of the gun, it's the logos, it's the debate, the discussion. And that's what I try to do with English Canadian. I did two podcasts 2 weeks and 3 weeks ago with a French Canadian. We did one in French for Quebecers, and the next week I said, let's do one in English, and we did one in English, and I called the podcast "Two French Frog on the enemy over the enemy line," and there were a lot of people that were happy because the man knows a lot about Lyndon LaRouche. He was in Washington for 10 years. And he was a correspondent for a French newspaper in France in the 1980s during the Clinton era. And he was explaining the takeover by the RCMP, the CIA, how they manipulated the sovereignist movement. And there's a lot of people who start to say to realize that French Canadian, they don't hate English Canadian. They just don't. It's a double misunderstanding. Yeah. I see it. Maybe, like you say, it's a long path. You cannot go back. We try to unite people.
That's right. And this is what happened in America. If you understand the smart people, like John Adams, one of the founding fathers, he understood that we're never going to resolve these sects that have all sprung up after the Reformation. So but we have to have a moral consensus. We have no constitution that functions in the absence of a moral people. That's what he said, and that's absolutely true. That is the real hidden grammar. So whether you had to have this moral consensus, and you did, even with people who were intellectually Satanist, like Ralph Waldo Emerson, he was, from a societal point of view, he was married to the same woman. He was a family man. He lived with other family men. They had a social, sexual contract that was intact. The group that changed that was the Jews. The Jews undermined the moral consensus of America beginning in the 1950s by constantly trying to overthrow obscenity laws, constantly agitating for things like abortion. They knew that the sexual issues were the Achilles heel, and they succeeded in destroying that moral consensus. Now, that's what's got to come back. That's what's got to come back. That's the only thing that's going to unite the French and the English and the entire world, for that matter. We have to come back to the notion of a moral consensus. And the main obstacle to this right now is Israel. The main obstacle is the Jews, who are constantly saying they have a right to kill children, whether with abortion curettes or with F-16s. We cannot tolerate that. We cannot tolerate this undermining of the moral law. No tolerance whatsoever here. None.
You see, you are a great voice for this, and I'm happy that you that you came and we can have this discussion, because here we don't have people like you who will express those ideas. We are under a spell. And this is maybe that's what I try to do as much as possible in English. It's very difficult in French, because here in Quebec, people are disconnect from this reality. But you will be in Montreal at the end of August.
That's right. So
and
get ready. I'm coming. Montreal.
Dr. E. Michel Jones is coming. So you will be a speaker.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I haven't been asked to speak. I'm mostly a participant, but I'll talk to the people there.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to make contact with Quebec, because I've got this book coming out in French, and I wanted to talk to these people about social credit, because I've written a book on economics. So it just seems to me it's a good place to go and have some conversations.
Exactly. And you referred me to Ellen Khmera, and I wrote her today, and I said, do you have any list of speaker? I want to know who will speak there. It's in Rougemont, Quebec, in the south, on the South Shore, in the Eastern Township. So you will be there as a guest, as a spectator, but I expect you that anyway. We will be able to talk about this.
If they ask me to speak, I will speak. I'm ready to speak at the drop of a hat. We'll find out.
I will promote you.
Good.
But so you will have also books in French, or some books that were translated by Maria Poumier.
Yes.
So that's good, and we can also again show your last book, Walking with the Bible and a Gun: The Rise, Fall, and Return of American Identity. So I'm eager to read it. I'm finishing the Danger of Beauty. Dr. Jones, you are picking my head all the time when I read your book. My wife, she tells me all the time, when I read the Libido Nominandi, I didn't sleep for practically 3 days. She said, "Can you go to sleep?" I said, "I cannot. I have to finish."
That's right. Forget it. Stop eating. Just read my book. Don't sleep. Just read my book.
You live on something else. So it's very interesting. Anyway, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
I remind Canadian who wants to read your book, they can find them on the website of the publishing house, Fidelity Press. They can also read your art.
FidelityPress.org.
Yes.
FidelityPress.org. That's where you have to go. Don't go anyplace else.
No way. We don't go to Amazon. Anyway, Amazon does not deliver in Quebec anymore. They can also read your article on the site Culture Wars, and they can
that's culturewars.com.
And they can also listen to you on the Cozy platform. And I found something interesting today. I discovered that you will soon be teaching live courses about your book. From
on the internet. It's an internet course. 12-week course on the on the Walking with the Bible and a Gun. We did a year ago. I did an internet course on Logos Rising. So yes. that was successful. I'm hoping this one will be successful too.
Good. I put the link in the description anyway, because I discovered that. Wow, it's interesting. So I hope. Anyway, I will see you in Montreal at the end of August. So I have a lot of questions.
Good. Good. Thanks for the interview. We'll see you. A bientôt.
Hey, it's excellent. Okay, thank you. Goodbye, Dr. Jones.
Bye-bye.